Hey guys, and welcome to Quality Shot, and I cannot wait for this match. Before we get into it, if you're new to the channel, please remember to subscribe to the channel and hit the like button as well if you're an old or new subscriber. Rafael Nadal versus Matteo Berrettini, the first US Open semi-final on the men's side, and it's a chance for Rafael Nadal to replicate that 2019 US Open run that he had when he won there in that Grand Slam. Now, you might be thinking, why am I saying that? Because, well, I'll tell you exactly why. Because in that same tournament, there was a chance for Zverev and Nadal to meet, a projected tie in the quarterfinals, as there was in this tournament. Now, similarly, like in this tournament, Zverev was upset. In that tournament, it was to Schwartzman, and in this one, to Shapovalov. A top 10 player at the time, Schwartzman, and Shapovalov just outside the top 10. Nadal managed to then obviously get through those two players. And today, or tomorrow even, he will face Matteo Berrettini, who he faced in the semi-final of the US Open that year. Now, he ended up winning that in straight sets, which was a very impressive performance. He then went on to beat Medvedev in the final in 5 sets. Now, Medvedev is playing Tsitsipas, so potentially if Nadal wins and Medvedev wins, which a lot of people are pipping as the two betting favorites, if you want to say it, then we could get exactly the same run that Nadal had at the US Open. Is it fate? We will see. You guys know I'm a Rafa fan. I'm very, very cautious of saying that he is going to win it, honestly, because I still think Medvedev, maybe even Tsitsipas, are better placed, whoever wins that in that final, to win out of either one of these two semi-finalists, personally. But forget about that. We're going to talk about Tsitsipas Medvedev in a separate video. This video is about Nadal and Berrettini, so we're going to go through their routes to the semi-final. We're then going to talk about how they played so far, on top of also talking about, well, we've talked about the head-to-head, don't need to talk about, they've only played each other once. And then we're going to talk about the styles, so how each style matches up against each other. So the strengths that Berrettini has, the strengths that Nadal has, how does that match up against each other? What kind of tactics can both employ? And then I'll give you my prediction as well. So let's look at the route to the semi-final for Berrettini. He's had a very topsy-turvy route, to be honest with you, beating Nakashima, which is a very tough first round tie, I thought, in 4 sets. Kozlov in 4, Alcaraz in 5. That was a very tight match, to say the least. It was decided on a super tiebreak in the final set. Then beat PCB in very, very impressive fashion, I thought, in straight sets. His only straight set victory in this tournament so far. Then he had a chance to actually win in straight sets against Monfils. He was 2 sets to love up, but Monfils came back from 2 sets down to then level it at 2 sets all. And I tell you what, Berrettini was struggling a huge amount with the crowd, and also with Monfils hitting from the back of the court. Started serving very well, and Berrettini's returning fell to the wayside. In that final set, though, Monfils really gifted that set to Monfils gifted that set to Berrettini. His level dropped a great deal, and it was a very similar scenario to Nadal and his quarterfinal, which we'll go through in a second. So for him, it was Giron in the first round. I got through that in straight sets nicely against Hanfman, the same as well. Khachanov dropped a set, but in the end got through in 4. Mannarino won in straight sets there, and then Shapovalov. So very similar to Berrettini, exactly the same, actually. He was 2 sets to love up and ended up conceding that 2 set to love lead. Then in the final set, Shapovalov's level dropped exactly the same as Monfils. Nadal managed to get the early break, just like Berrettini did in that final set against Monfils as well. And Nadal went on to win. The level of that 5th set and the level of that match between Nadal and Shapovalov, not as high, I would say, as the Berrettini-Monfils match for sure. Nadal struggling with a stomach issue as well. There aren't any reports coming out that he's still struggling with it, so hopefully he will be recovered by that, because we want to see both players fit and healthy. I think Berrettini has had issues in the past with injury, but again, I think he looks like he is fit and okay to play. Right, in terms of the styles and what each brings, well, I think we know exactly what each brings, but I'm going to go through it anyway. For Berrettini, the huge serving. I mean, ace after ace after ace. He's someone who can go through games serving 4 aces in a row and just hold to love. He's that type of player. He's got a fantastic serve, one of the best serves potentially on tour, that first serve especially. Manages to hit his spots. He's got so many different variations on it. It's not just quick and in the corners. It can be a slice. It can be a topspin serve. He's got all the different variations you'd want, and he hits all of them equally as effectively and as well and as accurately as you would expect from someone who is seen as one of the best servers on tour. On top of that, of course, is his hammer forehand. I mean, it's a huge, huge shot. Again, you've got a couple of variations on that, flatter one, a more kind of topspin whipped forehand as well. It's a really, really lethal weapon. And the biggest thing for him, the biggest strength, I think, for him is the 1-2 punch that Berrettini provides against opponents, which is the big serve, especially if it's out wide to their backhand side, shorter return, and then puts it away with a huge forehand. And there's so many points that I'm assuming are won from what I've seen, either on the first or second shot on his service game. Not many points will go beyond 2 shots when he's firing in those first serves like he does. However, the reason why he struggled against Monfils is because the courts started to slow down a little bit. And I think he was struggling to hit through the ball. Now, it'll be interesting to see what type of conditions we're in, because if the roof is on, I think that actually gives Berrettini a big advantage. The balls will bounce lower. They'll go quicker through the court. And for Nadal, he likes the ball bouncing higher and it to be slightly slower. It feeds into his game, of course, being he's one of the GOATs. He's great on all surfaces, but his best surface is clay. We know that. In terms of Nadal's strengths, we know what he's about. Again, the forehand is a whipping forehand. He is so good. The into-out forehand is unbelievable. He manages to set it up and dictate points so effectively on that forehand side. The backhand is solid as well. He's worked on it for so many years, and it's not a weakness anymore. Yes, it's not as potent as the forehand and not as destructive, but the backhand on the line, the depth I think he finds on that backhand, especially the flatter backhand on the line, which is so accurate and he finds so often, is such an effective weapon against the right-hander. On top of that, he slices so well on that backhand side. And for me, he is seen as one of the best returners of all time. In terms of the serving aspect, I will now talk a little bit about things to work on. I'm not going into it in huge depth. I don't want to bore you guys with it. But in terms of the return aspect for both players, Nadal, obviously, as I said, one of the greatest ever to do it. He definitely has been adjusting his return positions. That's a positive. He has been coming in more on the second serve, which he should be doing. Against Berrettini, it'll be interesting because he varied it a little bit against Shapovalov, sometimes very far back, but majority of the time in on that second serve. For Berrettini, of course, he hits big kick serves on the second serve. Will Nadal want that extra time? But then what it does is it gives that added danger of, yes, you might make the return, but they're all very, very short returns. Not all of them, but a lot of them are very loopy. Even if they are deep, they're kind of the looped, whipped backhand that he hits. Lasso forehand deep, but not with a lot on it. Or it's a backhand, again, sometimes very loopy and also short in the court, which Berrettini will feast on really with his forehand. So he has a decision to make against Berrettini. Does he go further back, the 4 meters back that he is, or 4 feet back, or does he stay kind of relatively along the baseline for that second serve? I would suggest that he will go somewhere in between, which is what he ended up doing against Shapovalov when Shapovalov was serving big on the second serve. He eventually said, okay, I should find an in-between, and went about a foot behind the baseline. That's probably the ideal second serve return position for Berrettini, who is so good at being able to kick that serve up, even on the second serve. For Berrettini, the returning is an issue because his returning, he misses a lot of returns, Berrettini, especially on the backhand side. He struggles a great deal. He gives away a lot of points when he's love 30 up. He doesn't manage to bring up a lot of breakpoint opportunities. He wins a lot of sets going to tiebreakers. And if he does break, a lot of the times it's because of mistakes from the opponent, not him returning particularly well. That's not to say he can't return well. We've seen it at times. But what I would say is that this will be a test because Nadal being a left-hander as well, he naturally arcs into the backhand of the right-hander. This will be a huge test of his ability to return And for him, he'll need to be on his game. For Nadal, he's been serving a lot better in this tournament. Yes, we've seen some double faults in pretty kind of poor circumstances, but overall, the first serve has been very potent. For the most part, he's hit a lot more aces and unreturnable serves than we're used to seeing from last year anyway, which isn't saying much because he had his worst serving year last year of his career. So it's more like the serve that we're used to seeing in 2019. It does look like it's bolted up a little bit. He's consistently hitting the 200K mark, which is, is a very, I think it's kind of symbolizes that he's willing to hit more flat on that first serve, especially. He's utilizing the serve out wide to the forehand a lot better on the juice side, which you might think is probably not a good idea to Berrettini. I'm assuming he'll use it less against Berrettini than he did against Shapovalov, because obviously to Shapo it's to his backhand, but it's still an effective serve because it's flatter out wide. It drags out the righty even on the forehand side. It's still dragging him out, and it's not a bad serve to hit. But you would imagine he will utilize one down the tee more often, of course, which is to the backhand of Berrettini. If he hits his spots, he'll have a very good serving now. I can't see Berrettini giving him a huge amount of trouble on his serve. The issue for Nadal is going to be himself. If he starts to hit double faults, if he starts to be tight on the second serve, which we saw at periods against Shapovalov, then of course he will have issues because Berrettini will step in on the second serve. He will crunch that forehand when he has the opportunity to as well. But the biggest thing for me in this whole match will be, one, the serve return dynamics. We know that Berrettini is a fantastic server, but Nadal's a fantastic returner. We know that Nadal's return, it has been pretty potent, and Berrettini's returning hasn't been that great, but it's been, decent. So how does that dynamic work out? In those two dynamics, you just feel like Nadal comes out on top overall, right, in terms of that. But then you also need to get into the dynamic from the back of the court. Now, Nadal is going to hit a lot of forehands, you would imagine, to the backhand corner of Berrettini. But what Berrettini does really well is run round that backhand. His movement round the backhand is very impressive. His overall movement is not phenomenal. It's not amazing. It's not world class. I'd say it's not bad. But around the backhand, he does run around it very well. Now, that means that Nadal's going to have to be very accurate with that lasso forehand cross court. Otherwise, especially Berrettini, who loves to take the ball on the rise, will feast on it with it running around it, hitting into out forehands or into in forehands. Nadal has had a tendency in matches and periods to hit the lasso forehand cross court pretty short with heavy topspin, very loopy, and it just sits up. It's not clay where he can get away with it. So he'll need to hit with more depth, slightly flatter if he can, and really drag Berrettini out. And also, if he can, be even more in the corners than he normally is to force Berrettini to hit either a drive backhand or a slice. And that brings me on to the slice of Berrettini, which we know is vastly improved. He's definitely being able to use it more defensively and attackingly than he ever was in the past. It's a more reliable weapon. It's extremely impressive. It's not something that he'll want to use a lot because you don't want to slice to Nadal. Nadal loves whipping the forehand from that low angle, actually, to be fair. And, he can make you pay for it if you don't hit that slice effectively enough and deep enough. But a positive is also the drive backhand. It's still a weakness, but it's not as much. He's hit more winners on it than I think I've ever seen in this tournament. And he's had more confidence on it. He's still not returning very well on that side. But when we get into the rallies, he's having more confidence on it. It'll be interesting to see how he how he deals with that heavy topspin to that backhand side, that big height that he has to deal with on the backhand side. Can he really get over that ball? Similarly for Nadal, it'll be how does he combat the huge forehand that Berrettini has to offer? Can he soak up that pressure? And does his backhand then hold up against the Berrettini forehand, which will be going cross-court, you'd imagine, a fair bit? The short answer, I think, is probably yes. The long answer is potentially he may have issues if Berrettini, especially if it's indoors, with dealing with the amount of power that Berrettini is able to generate on that side. He also hits a very good forehand cross-court angled. So with heavy topspin, but really high velocity through the court, and it just kicks off. Now, Nadal being dragged out there is not a good sign, obviously, because it opens up then Berrettini to the forehand on the line. That's what Berrettini will be looking to utilize. He'll use, I'm sure, the slice serve out wide on the deuce side as well to drag Nadal out and open up that court. Similarly, I'm sure Nadal will do the same thing on his side, which is a serve that he should be utilizing more often than not against the right-hander. It's a very interesting matchup. I think Berrettini, as I said, if it's indoors, it definitely gives him more of an advantage. Does it mean that he is the favorite? I don't know. I would say Nadal's the favorite going into it because he's got the experience. If he's fit and healthy, he has no issues with his stomach going into this, then he should just eke through this. I can see it being a 5-setter. I can see Berrettini being very hard to break. Then it comes down to Nadal and how he serves. But if he serves how he did in the first 2 sets against Shapovalov for the whole match, then he should be okay. I can see some tiebreakers in this, and I can see some very close sets. My prediction is going to be Nadal in 4 sets, but it's not a very confident prediction, and I can definitely see it going in the other way. I think Nadal's definitely going to be has to be up for this. He needs to be very close to his top level, or the top level that he is able to find right now. And he needs to be moving effectively, because Berrettini is a very, very good player. He loves coming to the net at times as well. I think the serve volley is a fantastic tactic for him, especially against Nadal. If he's going to serve, he's going to stand so far back, hit that slice serve out wide on the deuce side, come into the net. Same with the ad side, hit the topspin serve out wide to the backhand, to the forehand, come forward. Now that could be a danger because Nadal's so good at passing, especially on the forehand side. But it might be something that he gambles on at times if he feels like he's not having success staying at the back of the court and Nadal's managing to get the returns back and he's hitting unforced errors Berrettini. Of course, both players need to keep unforced errors down. That kind of goes without saying. And on the win account, well, we'll see how that all pans out. But for Nadal, I think he also needs to try and shorten the points at times, come in when he can. Why not? I don't think there's any issue with doing that. It's just making sure he comes into the Berrettini backhand, which, to be fair to Berrettini, he's hit some nice passing shots so far in this tournament on that side. People know to obviously go to that side, but it doesn't always mean that it's going to mean you can end up winning the point. So, yeah, let's see how it all goes. Right. In terms of my prediction, I said Nadal in 4 sets. Cannot wait for it to happen. I'm really looking forward to it. We will be doing a live stream of it. It will be at 3:30 a.m. UK time, so I'm going to have to sort out my sleep schedule, and then we will be doing Medvedev versus Tsitsipas after. I'll do a separate preview video for that. Thank you very much, guys, for tuning in. Really, really do appreciate it. Stay safe and well. Remember to smash the like button and subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you on the next video. Thank you very much.